The office was supposed to be empty, yet Clara heard the echo of a single voice calling her name. The glass walls shimmered under the city's midnight glow, and the hum of the skyline seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Why had he asked her to stay? Ethan Vale never did anything without purpose. When she stepped into his corner office, he didn't look up immediately, just signed something, then said softly, "Do you ever regret the things you never risked?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Her throat tightened. What was he really asking? The clock ticked once, twice, then silence swallowed them. Outside, lightning flickered across the cityscape, and she realized this wasn't about work anymore. Not tonight. He told her he needed her help revising a confidential file, but every sentence he dictated felt weighted, personal, almost coded. His tone softened where it shouldn't, and the space between them shrank with each quiet exchange. Clara wondered if this was some kind of test, or something else entirely. Why couldn't she look away from him? And why did his voice sound like a secret she was never supposed to hear? When the power flickered, the lights dimmed and the world outside blurred into darkness. For a heartbeat, only his voice existed. "Stay," he said, so quietly she thought she imagined it. She froze, caught between duty and something far deeper. Was this crossing a line, or erasing it? They spoke about ambition, fear, and the loneliness that came with wanting too much. His words cut deeper than she expected, stripping away the armor she always wore. "Everyone pretends not to feel," he said. "Until one night, they can't anymore." She wondered who had broken him, and whether she was next. As midnight passed, Ethan handed her an envelope sealed with his initials. "For tomorrow," he said, voice unreadable. But when she stepped into the elevator, she couldn't resist peeking inside. Her breath caught. It wasn't paperwork. It was a single photograph of him standing beside a woman she'd never seen, with a date from 6 years ago scribbled in red ink. Who was she? And why did he want Clara to find it? Morning sunlight spilled across Clara's desk, but her mind stayed trapped in the night before. The envelope felt heavier than paper, the photo still sharp in her memory. Every time Ethan walked past, her pulse betrayed her. He spoke to her the same as always, controlled, efficient. But his eyes lingered a fraction too long. The others didn't notice, or pretended not to. Somewhere in those silent glances, a line had already been crossed. Did he want her to see that photograph, or was it a mistake? Either way, something between them had changed. Something neither could undo. By noon, Clara couldn't stand the weight of not knowing. She went to his office, photo in hand. He didn't look surprised when she placed it on his desk, only tired, as if waiting for this moment. "She's someone I failed," he said quietly. "And I don't want to fail again." The honesty in his voice disarmed her, but it also frightened her. Fail again? What did he mean by that? The day dragged into evening meetings, but whispers followed her everywhere. Liam caught her in the hallway, concern etched in his tone. "You've been different lately," he said. She brushed him off, pretending not to hear the truth in his voice. When she caught her reflection later, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Restless, reckless, alive. What was she becoming under Ethan's gaze? That night, Ethan sent a message. "Come to the top floor." Her hands trembled as she stepped out onto the private terrace, the city spread wide beneath her. He stood by the railing, sleeves rolled, eyes distant but waiting. The air smelled of rain and risk. "You're afraid of what happens if you let go," he said softly. "So am I." And in that moment, the world narrowed to the space between them, the space about to disappear. The next morning, Marion Holt called Clara into her office. The woman's tone was kind, but her eyes missed nothing. "Be careful with him," she warned. "He doesn't let people close unless he's already losing control." The words hit harder than Clara expected. She nodded, pretending not to understand. but her heart already knew what she was denying. The days turned into a quiet storm. Clara worked harder than ever, but every shared glance with Ethan felt like a secret written in light. The photo still lingered in her drawer, and sometimes she caught him staring at that same drawer when he passed her desk. The more she tried to bury the memory of that night, the stronger it rooted itself inside. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something dangerous enough to make her forget who she used to be. Why did he keep pulling her closer only to pull away? After everyone left, she stayed to finish the quarterly report. But when she reached for a folder in the filing cabinet, she found something that wasn't supposed to be there. An old contract signed by Ethan Vale and a name she didn't recognize. Avery Vale. The ink was smudged, but the signature date matched the photograph. Her breath caught? A sister? A partner? Or someone else entirely? Every answer opened a darker question. The next morning, she avoided Ethan, but during the meeting their eyes met, and everything unspoken flooded back between them. He noticed her unease, the distance in her posture. "Something wrong?" he asked, his tone all business, his eyes anything but. She wanted to tell him what she'd found. Instead, she smiled. Thin, false, trembling. Nothing at all, yet her heart betrayed her with every beat. Later that evening, Liam cornered her again in the break room. "You're hiding something," he said. She tried to deny it, but her voice wavered. "You think I don't see it," he whispered. His kindness made it worse, because it reminded her of everything she was risking. The photo, the contract, the way Ethan's eyes softened when no one was watching. How long before someone else saw it, too? That night, she couldn't resist. She searched the firm's archives again. And there it was. Avery Vale listed as a co-founder who vanished 6 years ago after an internal scandal. The file was half deleted, the data corrupted, but one note remained. "Do not reopen." Clara stared at the screen, heart racing. Ethan's secret wasn't just personal. It was buried deep in the company's foundation. What was he protecting? And from whom? The next morning, Clara walked into Ethan's office holding the printed file. The silence between them was sharper than any accusation. He didn't move, didn't deny. "You were never supposed to find that," he said finally, voice roughened with something that sounded like regret. She waited, unsure whether to leave or demand the truth. He looked out the window for a long time before speaking again. "Avery isn't dead," he whispered. "But she might as well be, because of me." The words cracked something in him, and something in her wanted to know why. He told her everything, or almost everything. Avery had been his sister, his partner, and the reason he built his empire. But one mistake, one betrayal inside the company, had torn everything apart. She wanted to expose someone, he said. And I silenced her. Clara felt the weight of his confession settle like dust in the air. He had built a fortune from guilt, and now that guilt was sitting right in front of her, breathing. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you looked," he said. The world outside went on. Meetings, deals, voices. But inside, Clara couldn't stop hearing his words. She wanted to hate him for it, to see him as the ruthless man the headlines always describe. But every time she remembered his face when he said her name, it shattered that image. She'd crossed from curiosity into something far more dangerous, understanding. And maybe, in some broken way, he was doing the same. Later that night, she found him again. Not as her boss, but as a man unguarded. He sat in the dark conference room, jacket off, looking out over the city. "You should walk away," he said without turning. She stepped closer instead. "Maybe I don't want to." The words surprised her as much as him. For a moment, neither moved. Then he exhaled as if surrendering to something he'd been fighting too long. When she finally left, Marion was waiting outside the elevator. He told you, didn't he? She asked softly. Clara froze, realizing how much Marion already knew. If you stay close to him, Marion said, you will carry his ghosts too. The elevator doors opened, and Clara hesitated. Love, fear, truth. They all felt the same in that moment. She stepped inside, but her heart stayed behind. Rumors started before dawn. Whispers that something buried in Vale Capital's archives had been leaked to the press. Clara's phone buzzed nonstop, her name suddenly tied to an anonymous email traced to her computer. Panic turned her vision white. Ethan called her into his office, face grim. You didn't do this, he said, more statement than question. She shook her head, breath trembling. Then someone wants to make it look like you did, he murmured. The space between them, once fragile with desire, now filled with danger. Who had known what she'd found? By noon, security had combed through her emails, her folders, her entire system. Ethan defended her quietly but firmly in front of the board, his voice cold and precise. Yet every word he spoke felt like a confession of something else entirely. After the meeting, he found her in the hallway. Trust me, he said. She wanted to, but trust was what started this fire. What if she was being pulled into something far deeper than love? That night, Ethan disappeared. His office was empty, desk cleared, laptop gone. Panic surged through her. When she called his number, it went straight to voicemail. A soft knock startled her. Avery Vale stood in the doorway. Alive, real, and nothing like she expected. You shouldn't have opened what wasn't yours, Avery said, eyes sharp. But now you know what he's capable of. Clara felt her blood run cold. How much of Ethan's story had been a lie? Avery revealed fragments of the truth. Embezzlement, betrayal, and the cover-up that ruined her name to save Ethan's company. He chose survival over blood, she said bitterly. Clara wanted to defend him, but the evidence in Avery's eyes was undeniable. Still, the man she knew, the one who stayed late to talk about risk and regret, felt different from the monster Avery described. Could both versions be true? When Clara returned to the office the next morning, Ethan was waiting. You met her, he said flatly. Then you know what she thinks of me. His eyes held a weariness she hadn't seen before. I didn't destroy her, he continued softly. But I didn't save her either. The truth hung like fog between them. Thick, heavy, impossible to clear. She should have walked away. Instead, she closed the door. The company descended into chaos. Reports leaked, investors panicked, and journalists circled like vultures. Clara watched Ethan unravel behind glass doors. Once untouchable, now human, fragile, haunted. When she entered his office, he looked up with eyes that had lost their edge. They'll come for me, he said, and maybe they should. She wanted to tell him that wasn't true, but part of her wondered if he was right. Everything she'd admired in him, the control, the strength, was breaking, and beneath it something raw and painfully real was finally showing. By midday, the board suspended Ethan pending investigation. Security escorted him out while the staff pretended not to stare. Clara followed him to the lobby, unable to stay silent. You don't have to face this alone, she said. He stopped, turned, and for the first time smiled, not with power, but gratitude. You shouldn't waste your loyalty on a man who lost everything, he murmured. But she already had. That night, Clara sat alone in her apartment, replaying everything. The files, the secrets, the nights of stolen honesty. She realized she didn't want his empire or his redemption. She just wanted the man who once looked at her like she was the only thing real in his world. But maybe that was never real at all. A knock came at her door. When she opened it, Ethan stood there in the rain, eyes hollow, clothes soaked. I had nowhere else to go, he said. She let him in. He told her everything. The embezzlement Avery tried to stop, the lie he told to protect the company, and how guilt had consumed him ever since. I thought money would make me untouchable, he said, but it only made me smaller. Clara listened in silence, tears running unnoticed. He reached for her hand, not out of desire, but apology. "If I lose everything tomorrow," he said softly, "at least I told you the truth tonight." Before dawn, he was gone. His jacket still hung on the chair, his scent still lingered in the air. A message blinked on her phone. "Thank you for reminding me what it means to be human." She pressed her forehead to the screen, knowing he wouldn't come back, not until everything burned down or began again. Outside, sirens wailed faintly. Somewhere in the city, a man who had everything was finally learning what it meant to lose it all. Days passed without word from Ethan. News broke of Vale capital collapsing, shares frozen, assets seized. Clara should have felt vindicated, free, but instead, she felt hollow. Then, one evening, her phone buzzed with an address and 2 words. One last time. She almost didn't go. But curiosity, fear, and something she refused to name pulled her there. The old pier was empty, waves slapping against the wood. He stood at the edge, no guards, no power, no pretense, just a man stripped bare. He told her the investigation was over, that he'd confessed everything. "They'll take what's left of the company," he said. "But not what's left of me." Clara stepped closer. "And what's that?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Whatever you still see when you look at me." His voice cracked, softer than she'd ever heard. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was surrender. She reached into her bag and handed him the photograph. The one had given her that first night. "You left this behind," she said. He stared at it for a long time before tucking it into his pocket. "I left a lot behind," he murmured. The moment hung heavy, fragile as glass. "So why me?" she asked. "Because you looked at me like I could still change," he whispered. The wind rose and rain began to fall again, slow and cold. He turned toward the city lights one last time. "I'll disappear for a while," he said. "Find something worth being honest for." She wanted to stop him, to hold on to what little they had left, but she understood. Some stories weren't meant to be saved, only remembered. "Will I ever see you again?" she asked. He looked back, eyes soft, tired, but alive. "You already did." Weeks later, Clara walked past Vale Capital's empty tower. The sign was gone, the glass windows dark. She paused, remembering the man who once ruled the skyline. And the night he finally let it go. The world moved on, but she carried his story like a quiet ember. When she looked out at the city lights, she no longer saw power or greed. She saw a man who'd fallen, and a woman who'd learned that love doesn't always save you. Sometimes, it just changes what you're willing to lose.